Alrighty, welcome everyone. My name is Melissa Mnitty, and I am a physical therapist and certified personal trainer, and this is the Tennis Physio Podcast. Today, we're going to be interviewing Tara Collingwood, who is a nationally recognized expert and spokesperson on nutrition, fitness, and health promotion. Tara Collingwood is currently a nutrition consultant for the USTA National Campus and is a sports dietitian who has worked with the Orlando Magic, University of Central Florida, Johnson & Johnson, Human Performance Institute, the World Wrestling Entertainment, and various individual, recreational, and professional athletes. Her specialty is in performance nutrition, and she works with individuals and groups to help them reach their full potential by teaching them how to fuel their bodies. Tara is a registered dietitian, certified in sports dietetics, and a certified personal trainer. Just a quick reminder for everyone, this podcast is for educational purposes and not to be used as individual medical advice. So without further ado, let's welcome Tara to the show. Thank you, Tara, for joining us.
Hey, Melissa, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So just a little background. So as a physical therapist, I currently work with tennis players and particularly adult tennis players looking to enhance their game while balancing other aspects of their life. And so we wanted to have a little bit of a conversation of how they can optimize their performance on the court. Before we kind of get into those details, can you tell us about your business and mission and kind of how you got into this?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I know you gave a wonderful bio there. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been a sports dietitian for over 20 years and have had the pleasure of working with lots of different organizations with professional athletes and amateur athletes and everyone in between. So it's been a wonderful ride. I am athletic myself, been a marathon runner for many years and just sort of love sport. I just have always loved nutrition, loved sport. And so, went to school for the double major in exercise physiology and nutrition and always knew that I wanted to be a sports dietitian. I'm one of those weird people that just knew back in high school what I wanted to do for a living and haven't changed. So, in terms of my philosophy, my passion is really helping people with performance, whether it's working with business people and how to perform at your best at work, whether it's a mom or a dad or whoever that wants to perform at their best in that role, or a professional or amateur athlete. We all just want to do our best. And so I really think that nutrition, what we put into our body, when we put it into our body, hydration, all of those things can make a big difference in terms of our energy and just sort of how we show up for life.
That is so true. And it's funny you bring that up, Tara, because I kind of went into the same thing, but the opposite. So instead of the focus on nutrition, I was like, oh, I want to help people with their bodies. But nutrition is such a key component to that. I also did a minor in nutrition. So it's hard to, keep the two separate. So I think it's definitely something we can talk about today. So in terms of kind of with busy adults, right? Obviously, we have to balance our desire to be active on the court and our desire to also stay healthy, but also, maybe balancing children, jobs. What advice do you have for busy adults in terms of nutrition?
Yeah, I think a lot of us tend to eat very reactively. And so I try to help people think more about being proactive. And unfortunately, that comes with some other P words of like planning ahead a little bit, preparing ahead a little bit. And it's not fun to have to do that. But, the alternative is, as I said, reactive. And you're reactive to, time. How much time do I have? Oh, I don't have time for breakfast. I got to leave the house without anything. And then who knows when you eat next? It's reactive to what looks good, what sounds good, what's available, and that's not always the healthiest option. So if you, plan out that breakfast the night before and you can grab and go, or you bring your lunch, or you thaw something out for dinner tonight, there's just that little bit of effort can help to prevent the reactive eating, which most of the time is not going to be as healthy. And then the other thing is, I think one of the biggest problems we have, especially in America and really around the world too, is portions. It's not, I'm all about the P words. It's not even the what we're eating, but it's the how much. So I don't want people, I never want a person to say, I can't have, unless you're allergic, you can have anything.
Yeah.
You can have chocolate, French fries, pizza, whatever, but there's always a but, how often, how much, and it's the how much that, we get ourselves in trouble with. So, just looking at some of those favorite foods that might be some of the higher calorie stuff and how much can I have of those things? And when we're talking about performance, how is that going to affect my performance or recovery or, whatever we might be talking about?
Yeah, I definitely agree on the planning. That's one thing. When I meal prep, my weeks are fantabulous, but if I don't, oof, things get a little bit tricky for sure. And I've heard, kind of this 80-20 rule thrown around. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, right? Of yes, we can eat anything, but everything in moderation kind of deal, right?
Yep, absolutely. That's one of the things I teach is 80-20. Exactly.
Nice.
There's a lot of application to different parts of our life too of 80-20, but
Right.
definitely nutrition, and the idea is most of the food you eat, approximately 80%. I mean, I'm not calculating it out. I hope you're not either. But approximately or most of, 80% or most of the food I'm eating has nutritional value. Is that
Yeah.
too much to ask? But we can include some of the fun stuff. We can include some of those, want foods, some of those foods that are a little bit higher calorie, less nutritionally dense, but we can include those. And I like to encourage including them on a regular basis instead of
Yeah.
saving them up for one cheat day
Yep.
or, just vacation or something like that, because then your energy is crap.
Yeah.
And you want good energy when you're on vacation and on the weekends or whatever that might be. So, I encourage people to distribute those fun foods, throughout.
Yeah. I think it helps with the guilt too. I know a lot of us, attribute different things to food. So having that consistency throughout, I think is a good idea as well. Awesome. Thank you for that. Um, in terms of superfoods, I know we talk a lot about this. Sometimes you hear it in the news. People talk about the foods you need to eat, right? The foods you need to include in your diet. Um, what are these superfoods, if they do in fact exist, and how can we incorporate them into our daily lives to help improve performance?
Yeah, superfoods doesn't have an official USDA, FDA definition. But just the idea of a superfood is something that is super, that is good for you, that is good for your body. And so it might have really that, higher level of some of that nutritional value. So obviously the fruits and vegetables are going to be what I would consider, superfoods. And there's a sort of I mean, all fruits and vegetables are good, but some have a little bit more nutritional value and antioxidant power and that kind of thing. So the superfoods tend to be the ones that are characterized with that high antioxidant power. So like the blueberries, blackberries, spinach, broccoli, kale, those kinds
Yep.
of things. And those are all great, but also things like beans, black
Mm,
beans and kidney beans. Those are actually very high in antioxidant power and have a really good ratio of protein and fiber and good things. Whole grains can be considered to be superfoods. So I don't think there's any one food that is a must have in anyone's diet, but a combination of the way you're eating and including some of these sort of high nutrient foods on a regular basis.
yeah.
And again, that helps balance out some of that 20% that we were talking about.
Absolutely, right? Having that well-balanced, rounded diet, right? That includes all of the good stuff for us, right? Instead of just, oh, we only eat this one thing and that's going to be the ticket to our success, right? It's having that colorful plate essentially, right?
Yes.
So, on that note, obviously we talked about the good stuff for us. Are there things we should probably avoid if we really want to enhance our performance on the tennis court?
Yeah. So, like I said, it's kind of this 80-20 idea. So, in that 20%, there's nothing that I say you absolutely cannot have this or you'll never be a world class, anything, unless you're allergic. Of course, we
Right.
don't want anything that's
Naturally.
going to harm you. But there are foods that are going to, of course, help you perform better than others. And so, especially right around competition time. And what happens is when we're close to competition, we've got adrenaline going and
Hmm.
got that, kind of nervous stomach. And so having foods that might even on a good day irritate you, but on a competition day could really irritate you in terms of some gastrointestinal distress or come up, the other
Yep.
way in terms of making you, have some gas or some belching or something like that, or God forbid you throw up on the court. We've seen a lot of that
Oh yeah.
happen in tennis in any athletic things. So, so I think it's very individual, but I try to tell my players to, avoid spicy foods in those,
Mm,
half a day to a day prior to a competition, fatty foods. So, if
mm,
you're going to be playing in the afternoon, don't have French fries and greasy cheeseburgers and chicken nuggets and that kind of stuff for lunch. Don't
right.
have pastries and donuts for breakfast. Try to keep it a little bit more bland, a little bit lower fiber, lower fat, cereal and bagels and, just kind of stuff that's very easy to digest is what I tend to recommend. So
Hmm.
in terms of, your question was really what to avoid. So I would say the spicy, the fried, the really greasy, creamy stuff right before competition. And if you want to have that celebratory pizza, have it afterwards.
Right.
And then that's going to be a good time to sort of have that maybe higher calorie, more greasy type food.
Right. So definitely thinking about that timing is going to be important. Not necessarily avoiding it always, but especially right before competition is more the key, right?
Hmm.
Awesome. So in that vein, right, in terms of pre-match meals, you kind of touched on this with, keeping it bland with the cereals and the bagels. But what is, especially for our junior athletes and adults as well, what is the ideal pre-match meal?
Yeah. So, I'm always encouraging all of the junior athletes and pros that I'm working with to, of course, have breakfast. And the hard thing with tennis is you don't always know when you're going to play. You think
Yep,
you know, but that can change all the time. So
absolutely.
you have a match at 10 and then all of a sudden it's pushed to 12:30 and you're like, well, breakfast is gone now, but I don't want to eat because it's, I'm going to play in a minute. So it's hard. So I always
Hmm.
encourage, packing snacks. And again, keep those a little bit bland. So let's start with breakfast. So breakfast, you want to have carbs and definitely have some protein there. So, some eggs and toast or a
Hmm.
waffle, the bagels, the cereal, the oatmeal, that kind of stuff. But make sure you're having a protein because
Right.
unless you have an 8 o'clock match, it's going to be a little while until
Yep.
you're going to eat something. So carbohydrates give you energy, but then that protein will give you a little bit of lasting power in that food
Right.
and fruit or vegetable as well. So if you want to have some
Mm.
juice or you want to just have some, fresh fruit or a smoothie or something like that, that would be great. And then just pack your bag with granola bars and fresh fruit, bananas. I always tell athletes, you hear the adage, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and I'm all about the banana a day for every athlete. So
Yep.
bananas are a wonderful thing to throw in your bag. They can, they're naturally in the peel. They're easy to, to just get out and eat. But you can pack other fruit as well, of course. And I call it just crunchy carbs. So
Crunchy carbs. I
whether
love
it's,
it.
some dry cereal or like the little,
Yep.
Belvita breakfast biscuits, again, the granola bars, stuff like that.
Yep.
Or, a PBJ, again, in the heat that
Yep.
can sit in your bag for a little while, if you aren't going to play until the afternoon, turkey sandwich for lunch, that kind of thing. So, having things again that are a little bit bland,
Hmm.
but going to give you carbs, mostly a little bit of protein in there. Try to stay away from super high fat. I mean, a little peanut butter is fine. A little bit of, trail mix that have some nuts is fine. A little avocado, but I just wouldn't do the really heavy, mayo and heavy stuff like that, especially if you know that doesn't sit in your stomach real well.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there like a recommended in terms of grams for protein and carbs that people should be aiming for?
Oh, that's so individual based on the person. But you want to try to, I would say like a 400 or 500 calorie breakfast would be
Hmm.
good. And then just sort of think about those snacks in between, 200 calorie snacks or so, lunch again, maybe 500 calorie lunch again, depending on when you're going to
Sure.
play.
Yeah.
So, it takes about 3 to 4 hours to digest a meal. And that doesn't mean it has to be totally digested, but you're going to want, if you're going to eat a meal sized amount of food, then you want to do that at least 2 hours before play. But a snack you can eat right before. You could be
Right.
eating it as you're walking down the court, that banana. And I mean, people do it in changeovers and stuff too. So,
Yep.
those carbs, the bars, that kind of stuff, gels, of course, sports drinks, you can all do, during, and that's
Right.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, like the more simple carbs can be right up until, in that smaller time frame versus the more complex things. If, we're having that bagel with peanut butter or something like that, that a little bit more timing
Yes.
in terms of before the match, essentially,
Yeah.
right?
That'll take a little longer to digest. Yep.
Awesome. And then in terms of recovery, right, we want to make sure that all that energy that was used up gets replenished. What do you recommend for our athletes in terms of recovery meals?
Yeah. So, recovery, everybody always thinks protein, protein, protein. But the thing that you just used on the court is carbs and fluid.
True.
So,
Absolutely.
you're probably dehydrated and you're probably, energy is gone. Your energy stores, your glycogen stores are depleted quite a bit from the play. And so
Yeah.
really what you want to think first when you get off court is fluid and carbs. So a banana and some water, or you could do sports drink, but protein can be there too. But just, I don't want people chugging protein shakes because it's mostly protein and there's no carbs in there. So if you want to eat a banana for the carbs and then drink your protein shake, that's fine. But, we always think about, chocolate milk is one of those that's purported as a wonderful recovery beverage. And it is, because it's got carbs, but it also has a little bit of protein. You could do a smoothie, you could do, again, a sandwich, but just think like, I need carbs to replenish energy. I need fluid to replenish what I lost in sweat. And then within 2 hours or so, get the protein in. So probably your next meal will be fine to get the protein. I'm not worried about protein right now. When you walk off court, I'm worried about, let's get some carbs, let's get some fluid on board, and then you can worry about the protein later.
Yeah, so even like having a smoothie with some protein in it, kind of combines all that, or just like you said, the chocolate milk. In terms of timing, is there an ideal window that we want to be aiming for to get all that good stuff in?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So within 30 minutes after play, you want to try to get those carbs and fluid. And then within the 2 hours, I would say that that protein is good. So try not to let it go 2, 3, 4 hours after finishing play. And this is for practice and competition. We tend to practice more than we compete. So these are good tips for like, okay, on practice days, I need to make sure that I'm replenishing afterwards. So if you're playing in the morning and then boom, you're showering and going to work or school or whatever, you got to eat. We can't just, run off to our next thing. And then 3 hours later, oh my gosh, I'm famished. And for some people, exercise suppresses appetite. And so you, especially exercise in the heat. And so it's difficult sometimes to sort of feel like you want to eat something. So that's where, maybe just drinking something like that, smoothie can be a refreshing way to get the carbs, the fluid, and the protein all in one, or the chocolate milk, at least get that down until your appetite comes back to actually eat your next meal.
Yeah, especially in this Florida heat. I know it definitely doesn't always seem very appetizing to eat a heavy meal, especially after, like you said, both practice and competition. And I love that point that you bring up, right? Sometimes we practice just as much or even heavier than when we compete. So even trying some of these strategies around practice time to see, well, how did that work? Did I feel energized? Did I feel sluggish? How did I feel the day after if I didn't feel so well? So kind of trying some of these things around practice before even like a match day or something like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. And so we talked about recovery, we talked about before. In terms of, kind of complementing all of that stuff, what are your thoughts on supplements for athletes?
Yeah, so I think supplements are exactly that. They are a supplement to your diet. So they shouldn't replace, nutrients or food, but a lot of times it's difficult to get all of the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that we need, or there are things that we could take that will be beneficial that maybe we don't like, or maybe are difficult to get in our diet. So vitamin D is a perfect example. Even though it is the sunshine vitamin and tennis players are outside in the sun, hopefully we have sunscreen on. And so that vitamin D is an important one for our bones, but also just for overall health. So that's one that I do recommend as a supplement because there's very little in the food supply and most of us are deficient, even in the state of Florida, even in the sunshine state.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. So vitamin D is definitely one that I recommend to take supplementally. I'm a big fan of omega-3s, the fish oil. I think they're really good for your brain and your heart, and also maybe, helps reduce a little bit of that inflammation. Athletes are always in like kind of a constant state of inflammation, especially when you're practicing and working out and stuff all the time. So I love the omega-3s. And again, we don't eat very much fish. And so even if you're eating it once a week, I like the omega-3 supplement on a daily basis in order to get those good omega-3s, protect your heart, protect your brain. Probiotics, we've learned so much in the past few years about the gut microbiome, and it's still this like mysterious thing, but our gut is really what dictates so much of our health. And I don't even think, we didn't know this 20 years ago. We knew it was important. Like, what? So it's our immune system. It's, it's so much of our health can be traced back to that gut health. So prebiotics, AKA fiber. So eating those fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans and all that good stuff. And then the probiotics. So the probiotics are something that, again, you may or may not be getting in your diet. So maybe we
Yep.
take that in a pill form, a supplement form. And probiotics, by the way, in the food are yogurt, kefir, fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut, also the kombucha. There are ways to get probiotics in your diet, but
For
again,
sure.
how often are you having, those things? Are you having yogurt on a daily basis or just every once in a while? And then let's see. Oh, I love creatine. Again,
Mm.
even 10 years ago, there was this question of, oh, creatine's only for these big muscle guys, and is it really safe and all this stuff?
Yep.
And there is so much about creatine now that is good for our muscles. It's also good for our brain.
Yep.
So just 5 grams a day, one tiny little powder scoop. I throw it into my my green drink every morning. And I've been, especially for women. I mean, again, a lot of
Yeah.
people think this is for
Hmm.
men, but creatine for women is a wonderful thing as well.
Yep.
And so creatine is one of those supplements that I would say is worth it for adding to your diet. So those are probably my top ones that I recommend as supplements, just because they are difficult or people just don't get them in their diet on a regular basis. And so taking it as a supplement is a good idea.
I love that. And I think definitely, like you said, the gut microbiome is something we're learning so much about. It is the center of the universe, essentially, in terms of our health, right? So being cognizant of what we're putting in our bodies and how that influences everything too.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point about the creatine. You hear a lot about it for men, but definitely not for women, right? Because women are always, well, oftentimes afraid of, bulking up, right? So am I going to take
Right.
creatine? Is it going to do things to my muscles, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
exactly.
understanding it
Yeah.
can be
So
beneficial.
it won't. I mean, it's not going to bulk you up.
Yep.
And, we know that, especially, well, men and women, we're losing muscle as we age.
Hmm. Yep.
So, I think that it's good for everybody to help try to get us to maintain our muscle mass.
Yeah, and especially when we complement that with exercise, right? It just compounds the effects, right?
Yes.
So awesome. Any nutrition myths that, we hear a lot of, so many ideas of, oh, this is good for you. You should have this. Why aren't you eating this great new food? But there's a lot of nutrition myths out there. Are there any that are actually detrimental to our health and performance in sport?
How long do you have?
Oh boy.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I kind of kid, but kind of not. So,
Sure.
it's hard because people are vulnerable because we have this obesity epidemic, and so people are
Hmm.
desperate sometimes to lose weight. We're desperate to find things that'll help us with performance, for athletes. And so you've got like this vulnerable audience, myself included, that's
Yeah.
like, oh, is that going to be the quick fix that's going to
Yep.
do it for me? So I would say one of the big ones that I've been hearing lately is, of course, the intermittent fasting.
Mm.
And I'm not going to totally poo-poo it, because here's the deal, is that I believe that whatever works for you as a
Hmm.
person, whether it's placebo effect or whether it actually works in
Yep.
your opinion, then do that. And
Yep.
so I have had so many people that are like, no, I feel so much better. I have a more clear mind.
Yep.
Da da da. Great. Okay. But
Go for it.
for athletes that I work with specifically, I am very against intermittent
Mm.
fasting because they're working out 4 or 5 hours a day. So,
Hmm.
my average, weekend tennis player, if you want to intermittent fast, fine. Definitely don't go on the tennis court with nothing in your body. If you have an 8 o'clock match, a 10 o'clock match, a, noon match or something like that, you have to, eat something before you go out and do exercise. But if you want to do it in your office work day for, not eat for several hours after getting up, okay. But especially for, the really competitive athletes, we need to get nutrition in you first thing in the morning. We need to have snacks, even in the evening after dinner, sometimes depending on, goals and
Yeah.
the the situation. So that's one that's sort of like, I don't love it, but if you really, really
Yeah.
want to do it and try it out, okay. Obviously the keto and all that kind of stuff, we need carbohydrates to exist. I have seen way too many athletes that crash and burn, like
Mm.
literally will just hit the wall and crash and run out of energy, very moody. There's
Mm.
lots of things that carbohydrates are for. And again, injury risk can go up if we're not fueling ourselves. And so that's where the difference between, maybe a recreational athlete and how much you're working out versus once you get to a certain level, you can't mess with this stuff. And that's what I always tell my athletes is you are not the regular person out there. If your friends are up until 2 a.m. on TikTok, like you can't do that. You need to get your sleep.
Right.
Because you are exercising 5 hours a day. You have 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. You have strength and conditioning. Like you're not a normal 14-year-old.
Absolutely.
So, so the junior players, absolutely, we need to make sure that, and then, even, older and recreational athletes too, we can't fall into some of these diet traps out there that, that leave us deficient. So I guess, one of the things that I always tell people is if a diet is telling you to absolutely cut out an entire food group, be a little suspicious.
Yeah.
If it's telling you to, not eat for many, many, many hours or fast or anything like that, not really the best idea. I mean, if you want to do a 12-hour fast, that's fine. But, once we start getting into these 16-hour fasts, again, depends on what time you're exercising. I'm an early morning exerciser, so I can't. Like I would definitely be injured. I would definitely have my immune system down. I would definitely have, all kinds of things happen if I didn't refuel, after my exercise. So I think it just depends on the circumstance.
Yeah, I think that's so important, right? The three food groups are there for a reason, right? And we want to make sure we're having something from all of them. Obviously different proportions depending on the person and our needs, but yeah, I agree that avoiding food groups isn't ideal in the long term, right?
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been, super helpful. A lot of knowledge being dropped today in terms of resources, right? If people want to learn more, get more ideas of how they can improve their performance through their nutrition, what would you recommend for my audience?
So one of the places you can go is actually USTA. So I am the, National Campus registered dietitian, sports dietitian for USTA. So if you go to USTA.com and right on the top, you can click on improve. And then there's several options there, the health and fitness tab. There's lots of, you can click nutrition, you can click on all kinds of things, and you'll see some articles that have been written by myself and Trish, one of the other dietitians there. So that's one that I would say is specific to tennis nutrition, because there's not that many resources out there for tennis nutrition. So go to USTA.com, improve health and fitness. And then there's just a couple of podcasts that I like that a couple of my registered dietitian nutrition friends do. So one of them is called Spot On, and it's just a lot of the like certain trends that are going on that, she talks about. Her name is Joan Salge Blake. So that's a good one. And then the Kerry Report, Keri. Kerry Report. She also does a lot of the main trends and kind of debunks. She's very to the fact, like, don't do this. Ridiculous, kind of stuff. So
I love it.
I'll do like some of the TikTok trends and things like that and tell you why they're dangerous. And so I like those. I love the Whoop podcast. If you've ever listened to that one, really, really good. It's a little bit more scientific. So your average person who's not in, maybe, a healthcare field or sports and nutrition field, might be, but it's very interesting. They have great guests. And then the last one I really like is called the Mindset Mentor. And again, nothing to do with sports and nutrition, but it's just a really positive, getting your mind on that positive angle. So I love that one as well. So those are just some podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis.
Awesome. I think we could all use a little bit of a mindset mentor in a lot of aspects of our lives for sure. So we'll definitely be checking those out. And then Tara, lastly, where can people find you if, they want to learn more or work with you or anything like that?
Yeah, so my website is dietdiva.net. So just look up Diet Diva, you'll find me. And I've got all my contact information on there. I've got a blog, and then you can find all my social there as well on Instagram. I'm at Diet Diva Tara. And so, yeah, that's pretty much where I am.
Awesome. And I'll be including all that information in the show notes. And thank you, Tara. Anything else you would like to leave our audience with today before we log off?
No, I just really appreciate what you're doing, Melissa, for the tennis community and giving, good, solid information out there. There's so much that, we can get sucked into, and some of it is good and some of it is not. And so I know that you've got the strong science and you're really giving people good information. So Kudos to you.
Awesome, Tara. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, everyone, thank you for listening to the Tennis Physio Podcast. Give us a follow and see you next time.